Well, hello and welcome to the part 2 of the VWORLDTECH LLC Vwtlab VMWARE training lab. And again, you can always start at the VWORLDTECH LLC page. That's www.vworldtechllc.com, and there you will find all the resources, information, news, everything you ever need to build the labs that we're going to be working on. Where we left off on the part 1 of the lab, we had created a DNS server that we have also installed Active Directory. Go ahead and go back in it. Oops. Here we are, and we're going to get ready now to actually install the VMWARE vCENTER 5.5 to manage our host, and later on we're going to add a second host so that we can create a cluster and implement DRS, the Distributed Resource Scheduler, as well as HA, high availability, within the DRS cluster. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is we're going to create a user on our Active Directory DNS server so that we can then use that with administrator rights instead of using the admin V8 or the administrator user and password for our test today. So we're going to go to Manage, to Tools, and we're going to go to the Active Directory Users and Computers tool. Let's go ahead and minimize this guy. And this is our domain that we created on the first part of the lab, VWTLab.com. And we have computers and we have users. In our case, we're going to select the users. We have one main user, which is administrator. And we're going to add a second user called admin VA, but you can call it any way you want. So we're going to say new user. The first name is going to be admin VA. That's the only thing it's going to have. And my user logon name is going to be admin VA as well. Sounds correct, and it is going to be part of the VWTLab.com. Remember, this is not on the local server, this is going to be as part of the domain. So, the way I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it a password right now and have it never expire so I don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to stay with the same password that I used before. Again, you are free to use whatever you want. Make sure you just remember it so you can log back in. Okay, so we are done, but we want to make this user part of the administrators group. So to do that, we click on the properties, and we are going to click now on the account. Make sure everything is fine. And we are going to add them to the administrators. Right now it's only using domain user, so it has no rights other than user. So we go and add it. We type administrators. And there it is. You can always click on advanced, by the way. And as you are typing, it starts with administrator. Helps if you know how to spell. And those are the groups that administrator belongs to, has. So that's what we want. Okay. And now our user is admin VA, is a administrator user. And let's go ahead and make sure that that works. and we're going to log in again as the user that we created on the VWLab, domain that we created, and the name of the user is admin VA, and the password that we assigned. And now it's going to create the desktop basically for the admin VA. So that's the profile that the admin VA will have, and as you can see, it's blank again. Okay, so after a little bit of housekeeping, we have cleaned up our desktop and added the tools for DNS and for Active Directory right here. So we're ready to rock. So what do we need? We are going to need a Windows 2008 R2 server, and we are going to need the bits for VMWARE, which I already downloaded right here. Let's go ahead. And these are the vCENTER bits that you will download from VMWARE and then install. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I already uploaded the ISO for the Windows 2008 R2 server to my data store right here. Let's go ahead and make sure that it's there. So we're going to browse the data store, go to the ISO folder that I created, and there it is on my first one. It's right here. So that's what we're going to use. And that's our trial, 60 days, which is more than enough for what we need right now. So let's go ahead and use that. And again, we just create a brand new virtual machine. It's going to be a typical one. And we're going to name this one, to be consistent, VWT-VCENTER. So next. Yes, we're going to use the data store. We have plenty of room to use it. It's going to be a Windows Server R2 2008. Again, same thing, one NIC card connected to the only network that I created, which is the VM network. And we are going to use again SIM provisioning. I'm going to give it plenty of space, like 90 gigs, since it's not going to use it all at all. I just want to make sure that the database can grow to whatever it needs. Again, it's going to be a very small type of environment, but we want to make sure that we have enough to do all the testing and everything that we want to do, all the fun stuff. So we're going to edit it after it's done to make sure that we have everything we need. So again, this guy, we're going to give it 6 gigs, which is, or actually 8 for the install, and we're going to give it 2 virtual sockets and 2 cores for right now. Later on we can bring it down a little bit, but that's what we need right now. And again, for the ISO that we're going to select to install, we go back to the data store, to our ISO folder, and select the correct ISO, which is right here, and make sure that you click on connect at power on, otherwise it just kicked into the PXE boot and it just keep going on and on, it'll never stop. So make sure of this, connect at power on and the right ISO. Okay, pretty straightforward actually, right? Okay, so it's created, it's completed. And now, the same thing we did before, we're going to click on the console and we are going to go ahead and get it started. And we have our 2012 in here, so we're going to minimize our screen in there. Okay, and so much like we did with the DNS server or Active Directory server, we are going to go ahead and launch a console. and now we have the Windows 2008 installed. That's exactly what we want. We're gonna click on next. We're just gonna set it up as a regular server, but with no roles. And the only reason we are installing a Windows 2008 R2 joined to the domain is because it's a requirement for vCenter to be joined to a domain, to a DNS domain. Okay, so which one are we going to select? Well, we're going to select the full installation of the enterprise version. So as you can see, there are several that you can select, but the one we want is the one with everything, although we're only going to use it for installing the vCenter and maybe a couple of other tools that go along with that to manage the vCenter itself. Okay, so we'll accept the license terms, and we're going to do a custom again like we did before, and these are the 90 gigs that we allocated on our when we set up the VM, so they show up perfectly fine in here. And again, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording until it's completed, when the installation here gets completed. Okay, so we have completed installed, and now it's going to reboot the VM, the Windows 2008 R2 server, so we can continue with the configuration. Okay, and just like we did with the Windows 2012 R2, we are going to go ahead and give it the password for administrator that we want to use. This will be for the local administrator. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and now, and after he's done preparing the desktop, log in for the first time on the local host as an administrator. And here we are. We don't really need to add much of anything, because we are really going to be using, once we join the domain, we're really going to be using the admin VA user. But obviously there's a couple of things that we have to do in here right now, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the time zone. So that it matches the time zone that we set up on the DNS. In our case, it was Mountain in Denver, Colorado. And we're going to make sure that we have the right time right now, which it is 4 o'clock. And here we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, very important now. We want to make sure that we configured also a static IP address for our vCenter server, so that we always know where the vCenter is going to go to. We know already that we can use 100 or 105. We know already that 110 and 111 are taken, so we're going to give it 120. Let's make sure that we are able to give it 120. So, we do an IP config to see what the DHCP has assigned to us right now, which is 142. But we want to see if 192.168.0.120 is available. And since there is no response, yes, it is available. Okay. Perfect. So we're going to use it. And let's remember that we're also running in here the Vwtlab console. So we want to make sure that our server is ready for us. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here and make sure that the IP address is correct. And yes, it is 105. Perfect. So the first thing we need to do is A, assign a static IP, and B, assign the proper DNS. So we're going to say 192.168.0.120. We're definitely going to leave it as a class B. Our default gateway remains the same, 192.168.0.1, which is the default. Our preferred DNS, our first, is going to be 192.168.0.105. You guessed it. The address of the DNS server. And our secondary, just in case, is going to be the gateway. And that's mainly in case there is no name resolution on your 105, because it can resolve it, it'll default back to the 168.0.1. But might as well just add it to that. Okay? And yes, we are set and ready to go, so no problems in here. Perfect. Okay, so that is being done. We're going to continue down here to change some things. Again, this will be the last thing we're going to change once we join the domain. And just like we did before, we are going to disable the firewall for now, so we don't have any issues. And we're also going to enable remote desktop, which is always, I don't know why, well, yeah, for security reasons, disabled by default. Okay, that done. We are now ready to join the domain. And before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and reboot the server with a new and in here we're going to go ahead and take out our enhanced security from the Internet Explorer, because otherwise we'll be adding stuff all day long and we don't really need this anymore. For now we're fine, and we're just going to go ahead and bounce our server here. That's not what I want to do. And one more time. And restart. And I'm just going to tap Q for quitting. And here we go. And we'll watch it go ahead and reboot. And then we're going to join the domain once all of these changes that we made take effect. Okay, and we're ready. And again, if you remember, to log in, instead of Control-Alt-Delete, we use Control-Alt-Insert. And we are ready now. Okay, great. Again, one more time, we're going to go in locally, because we have not joined the domain yet, and now make it part of the Vwtlab domain. And to do that, we will change the name to call it VCENTER to be consistent, and we are going to join the domain. So let's go ahead and click in here. Again, we click on change, and look at this, we are on a work group, which is the default. So the first thing we're going to do is change the name. VCENTER is going to be the name, and we're going to join a domain, VWTLab.com. Don't forget the .com. You should find it because the DC is advertising itself. So it will go out and it'll basically do a multicast looking for a specific response from a DC, from the domain controller. And because the DNS we set it up to be the 105, that's where it's going to go. So what we want to do is log in on the domain VWTLab.com as the admin VA user that we created at the beginning of the training lab. Here we go. And we give the password that we assigned it. And this will give us a user that has admin rights without being an administrator, which should be reserved more for your local server type of stuff, management. Okay, so we are in. I knew we were going to, but here we go. And it's going to make us reboot again, so as to configure basically everything that it needs. And then we will log in as the admin VA on the VWTLab.com domain. Here we go. Yes, sir, we do want to reboot and go ahead and restart now. And the next step, once we are joined the domain, we're ready to go, then we're going to install the VMWARE tools. And after that, we will be absolutely ready to go ahead and start the installation step by step of the VMWARE vCENTER 5.5. Okay, so we are ready now, and we are going to go ahead and log in as admin VA. So right now it wants to log in on the local server as administrator, but we're going to do a switch user, and we're going to tell it right now that it knows that since I am a member of the domain VWTLab, it assumes that that's where I want to go, which is correct. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in as admin VA, and with the admin VA password that I assign on the DC. And now it's going to go ahead and use the same profile that I used or to create, or the profile for admin VA here. So it should look somewhat similar, not with obviously with all the extra tools in here, but with enough so that like we had it, that we can add now whatever we need. So now we can, and this is a little bit different because remember that in here we don't have to pin anything. We're just going to pin this to the taskbar, and also we are going to pin this guy and this guy, and now we're going to add the control panel. We want it to show on the desktop, and we want our computer to show on the desktop as well. So it's a lot simpler to set up, obviously, than with the 2012. But okay, so I think we have for right now what we need to go ahead and install the VMWARE tools. Let me go ahead. I'm a real stickler when it comes to this. I always want to make sure that at least I know what everything is at. I'm going to go ahead and rename this to the name that it has, so I know what I'm looking at. VWT vCENTER. Okay, excellent. And now we're going to go ahead and install the VMWARE tools. We go to the guest and install an upgrade or upgrade the VMWARE tools. That is essential. You don't have to, but the benefits of having it is way outweighed not having it installed. Okay, so it doesn't really show it sometimes, but most likely it already loaded it on the virtual media. And if we click on my computer in here, there it is, the auto run. And let's go ahead and click OK. Perfect. and we want to make sure that we use the admin VA for everything from now on. So everything we install from now on, we need to install as admin VA part of the Vwtlab domain. So again, admin VA. Oops, sorry. So what we want is actually give it the name here, Vwtlab / admin VA. Okay, so the requested operation requires elevation. That means that it wants to install locally instead of on the network, which is perfectly fine. So to do that, I told it to install as localhost instead of the Vwtlab administrator, which is the only user I have, the main one, and the password that we assigned to it. So I'll say yes. And here we go. I'm going to go ahead and give it that. Okay. Okay, perfect. Now we are going to go ahead and run the install in here. And just much like we did before, we are going to go ahead and follow the wizard here to install a complete version of the VMware tools. And this may take a little bit of time. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish. And yes, we want to reboot. Excellent, so we're back up. Let's go ahead and log in. And this time we are going to log in on the Vwtlab as admin VA. And here we go. So while it's booting up, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the VMware Tools image, and instead I'm going to connect the image that I downloaded, the VIM setup all, which is the image that I will be using for the vCenter 5.5. So let's see how we do that. We know what is that on the desktop there. Let me minimize this, and we go in here on the icon. We click on the CD DVD and we connect to an ISO image on the local disk. We're going to go to our desktop, our VMware, and there it is, our image. And this is going to load it as if it was now part of the local computer. So it looks to the VM like it is directly installed in there or loaded, and now all we have to do is run the install. Okay. Okay, so we're back on business. Excellent. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and install the vCenter server for Windows. Later on, we're going to install the vSphere client and a couple of other support tools. But we're going to start with the vCenter server. Excellent. Okay. So when I click on next on our vCenter server 6.0, we're going to accept the license agreement. And we're going to use the embedded deployment. So the vCenter server and embedded platform services controller. Everything that we need in here. And that's the system name, VWT Vwtlab.com. Yeah, we're not going to be using IPv6, so it doesn't really matter to us. Okay, so this is what we need to enter our single sign-on domain, which is going to be for vSphere.local, that's the default, and it needs to be a strong password. So you need to use at least numbers and a special character, at least one. Okay, and we're going to be using our default first site. You can name it any way you want. I just like to leave it standard as it is and just run with it. And you can also enter here a different domain. You can actually enter your own domain. So single sign-on domain there. Okay, we're going to use the Windows local system account for the database. We are going to use the embedded database, which is a Postgres database, instead of giving it a different database. You could use your own database, a SQL database or Oracle, whatever you want, and create a different instance for the vCenter. But in our case, for testing, we will be using the embedded. These are the ports that we're going to require to be open. And these are the default install directories with everything that we need in here. So we're going to go ahead and click install, and this may take a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, so we have completed the install of the vCenter server, and now we're going to launch the web client to make sure that it works. And if you go to localhost, let's go ahead and set this up really quickly. Use express settings, that's all we need. And here we go. Okay, we have a certificate error here. Okay. It is a secure website, so it uses the port 9443, and so we have to allow it to go to a secure, and it requires to use the Adobe Flash Player. So instead of doing that, since we know that it should be up and running, I'm going to go ahead and try it. I'm going to install the Chrome browser, and then I'll be right back with it. Go ahead and install the browser yourself on you, and also the Flash Player, the Adobe Flash Player, to make sure that everything works fine. Okay. Okay, so we're back, and now we are using the browser Google Chrome, because it has actually the the Flash built in with IE and Firefox, you have to include a whole bunch of different plugins that really make no sense for this particular lab. But if you want to use IE or Firefox, be my guest. Just make sure that you include the Flash player on both, and that will set you up. Okay. We're going to proceed to the local host. And here we are. I don't know why this keeps appearing here. Okay, so here we are one more time, and again we're going to enter the administrator user, and we have to enter it with the fully qualified name. With the password that we use for the single sign-on. And right now it's building the desktop for the first time, the interface with all the components. And remember, we're not really managing anything yet. So the first thing we're going to manage is the host that is actually where the server is actually residing. This hosting here, 192.168.0.110. This is the host that we are going to manage. Okay, so it seems that everything worked in here fine. We have a fully functional vCENTER 6. In our case, we're fully logged in, and we're going to go to our host and clusters. And the first thing we want to do is we want to create a data center. And we are going to call the data center Vwtlab. And that's where we're going to basically put all of our hosts, all of our resources in essence, host VMs, everything is going to reside on the Vwtlab data center. And now on the Vwtlab, we're going to go ahead and add a host. Very straightforward. And the IP address is 110, as we have it in here, 110. So we're going to do 192.168.0.110. Click next. What we used before, so root, the lowercase, root as the admin user and the password you assigned. And yes, we're going to try this certificate. And there we are. So we found it. It's on the 510. The Dell, and it's a 5.5 ESX host. So it's going to assign the license. We have a 47-day license. That's perfect for us. So we're going to click next. We're not going to enable the login directly to the host, so we're going to disable it. Click next and finish. and now it's going to start populating all the information related to my new host, and adding all those resources to the data center. So when this is done, adding all those components, and it starts managing the vCenter, the host, the second step we're going to do is we are going to install the VROPS appliance. Okay, so now we are ready to test the data center. Let's see here. Let's see a summary. We have no clusters. We have one host and 2 virtual machines right here. So it has seen everything we need to find. It has 2 data stores and 1 network. Exactly what we thought it was going to have. Okay, let's go home here. And we are done installing the vCENTER, and now we are going to go ahead and install the VROPS appliance, which depends on the vCENTER for its information and data that is collecting. So the difference is that the vCENTER are bits that you download as an ISO and install them on a Windows 2008 R2 server. Well, the VROPS that we're going to be using is actually an appliance, a virtual appliance that we'll be using to install. Okay, so we have downloaded the vRealize Operations Manager, and as you can see, it's a different type. It's an OVF file, or as we call it, a virtual appliance. And to install a virtual appliance in VMWARE, we go to the host, file, and we can use it as a virtual machine, or we can import it as a OVF template, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to browse for the OVF, and here it is, the vRealize under our VMWARE directory that we downloaded to, and we click next. It checks to make sure who is the vendor, the publisher, that it meets the 55 ESXi requirements. And we're going to call this one VROPS to keep consistent with our naming convention. It's going to be a small configuration that really requires the minimum amount of CPUs and of disk space for it. And small is big enough for what we're going to be doing. We are going to install it on the data store 1. We still have plenty of free space. And we're going to sim provision it just like we did to the vCENTER. And we're not going to power off right away because I'm going to make some changes to make sure that it's stable. So this is going to take a while. It's downloading right now the appliance, as you can see down here, from the from my desktop onto the data store where it's going to install it. And this will take some time depending on the system and your network, of course. Okay, so we have finished downloading and deploying the vRealize Operations Manager for our vCENTER, and the VM is right here, so we're going to edit it to make sure that it doesn't take everything it can, which it does. We're going to put him at 6 gigabits in RAM. Be careful with that because it'll take everything it can find. And we're going to leave him with 2 and 1. That's all we need. And the network adapter is fine, and this is fine. Okay, now we can power up. Otherwise, literally, virtual appliances like this one will definitely take everything they can out of the ESXi host you plug them in. So make sure you edit the machine settings prior to starting it up, or all of a sudden you'll deplete your host of every resource it has. This runs on a Linux-based operating system. That's why it's part of the it's distributed as a virtual appliance instead of the bits. It's a lot easier to deploy. And once it's set up or it comes up, we'll see it, and it'll give us the IP address to connect to it. Okay, so we're moving along in here. It's a little bit slow. Again, it's the first time, so it's really installing, configuring, doing everything all at once. So in reality, it's really not taking much longer than any other install, and it's fairly unattended. So once it gets going, it sets the whole thing up for us, and it's pretty straightforward. So we'll resume here when it's completed. And there we go. Now it is completed, and it's telling us how to access it. It's telling us that we need to go to the HTTPS 192.168.0.141 or 149. I'm sorry, that's what it's using for access. So we're going to do that from the vCenter, actually, to make sure that we have contact to it and we can actually access it. Okay, so we're going to open up one new tab in here, and we're going to go to HTTPS I don't know why it keeps doing that in here. Okay, there we go. And here we go. It's a secure connection, so we need to click on Advanced and Proceed. And this is going to take a little bit of time as it is actually loading. And here we go. And now we are going to do an express install for our VROPS, which is very straightforward. You can do a brand new install on a large enterprise deployment or expand the current existing installation. In our case, we're just going to do an express install. Click on Next. And we're going to give it a new password. And I'm going to give it the same password I gave my vCenter just to be consistent. And here we go. The user will be admin, and the password is the password that I signed. That is, again, in my case, the same as I gave the vCenter. And this is going to take a few minutes, as it says in here, since it's building for the first time the all the different components as well as the dashboards.
The next morning, May the 1st, 1945, the event was restaged for the cameras. But by then, Hitler was already dead. On April the 30th, as fighting raged overhead, the man whose insane ambitions had embroiled the world in war laid waste a continent and led to the extermination of millions of Jews, took his own life.